Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first session of the day, which is Road Ahead for Rooftop Solar by European Union. A little background about the session. The Government of India set its sight at achieving an ambitious target of 450 gigawatt of installed renewable energy capacity by the year 2030 in order to meet its nationally determined contribution target, which is NDC. This will be contributed by all RE technologies, including solar. While large-scale solar projects have been set up to expand the RE base, a considerable potential exists with the rooftop spaces across the country. The rooftop solar space has witnessed moderate progress compared to the immense potential it offers with buildings and vacant land available nearby. This decentralized mode of electricity has the potential not only to contribute to the consumer's requirement at their premises, but also contribute to country's RE mix. The key questions which will be discussed during the session would be key drivers for the RTS sector in India and EU, bottlenecks faced by the sector and ways to improve attractiveness of the sector, evolution of new business models to promote rooftop solar deployment, role the EU companies can play in accelerating the deployment of these projects. Our panelists for the day would be Dr. Nicole Glaneman, Mr. Chintan Shah, Mr. Kushagra Nandan, Mr. Sanjeev Agarwal, Mr. Federico Fuki, Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, and Mr. Ankit Rastogi. The session would be moderated by Mr. Vinay Rustagi, Managing Director, Bridge to India Private Limited. And to start the session, may I welcome Mr. Edwin, Councillor Energy and Climate Action, EU Delegation. Edwin, please.
So a very good afternoon to all of you. A very warm welcome. Can you hear me properly? I'm a little bit tall. A very warm welcome at this session on Route Ahead for Rooftop Solar. As just explained, we will talk about the rooftop market in India. And actually, under the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, we have done. Actually, I will take this off. We have done, I'm so used now to wearing the mask that I didn't notice that I was still wearing it. Under the Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, we have done a study analyzing the rooftop market in India, looking at the barriers, looking at the challenges and the main issues that might limit the growth of this important sector in India. We also looked at possible solutions, taking into account business solutions that worked or did not work in the European Union. So today the results of this study will be presented, and we will have a great panel, as has just been announced, discussing the main findings. And the idea is that this discussion and the main conclusion will also feed into the final report that we will then represent to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. So this is a hybrid session, and actually it's my first physical session since March 2019. And I must say that it makes a real difference. I meet people again that I met only 2 years ago in person, and I think there is real added value of meeting in person and seeing each other's body language and discussing eye to eye. Allow me to say a few words about the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership. It's a partnership that has been signed at the highest level by the Honorable Prime Minister Modi and by the President of the European Commission and of the European Council in 2016. And since then, the work under this partnership has only been increasing and has been strengthened. Also at the recent EU-India leaders meeting on the 8th of May, this partnership on energy and climate change was one of the key priorities, and the leaders agreed again about the need to further strengthen our cooperation. With our EU recovery plan, which focuses on recovering from the pandemic, the European Green Deal, our objective to be the first climate neutral continent by 2050, our target for 2030, which is absolutely necessary to be able to become climate neutral in 2050, our target of 55% emission reduction in 2030 compared to 1990. With all these objectives, climate and also specifically the clean energy transition has become at the core of our domestic policies, but also at the core of our external policies. Therefore, for us, it's extremely important to work together with the government of India, but also with the states of India, with Indian businesses, with the private sector, with think tanks, and with research institutes. We work together in the area of energy efficiency, renewable energy, including offshore wind, floating solar, rooftop solar, and solar parks, smart grids, power market design, sustainable finance, cooling and cold change, climate proofing, and also we will work more and more together in the area of hydrogen. I'm very much looking forward to today's session, which will focus on rooftop solar. Tomorrow we have another session on the skills that are required for the offshore wind sector. And I would also like to point out that we have an EU zone. Unfortunately, we are not here with a zone physically, but we have a virtual EU zone. I hope that next time we will again be here with a large EU zone that you can visit in person. Thank you very much, and once again a very warm welcome. Back over to you.
Thank you, Edwin, for setting the tone. Now, may I please invite our guests who are physically present over here, then I'll go to the virtual guests. May I please invite Mr. Ankit Rastogi, General Manager, Enapak. Welcome, Ankit. May I please invite Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, VP, System Operations, Power Markets, and Head Renewable Smart and DSM Projects, BSES. May I please invite Mr. Sanjeev Agarwal, MD and CEO, Amplus Solar. May I also invite our moderator, Mr. Vinay Rustagi, Managing Director, Bridge to India Private Limited. Our guests who have joined us virtually, Mr. Miguel Herrero, Policy Advisor, Solar Power Europe. Dr. Nicole Glaneman has shared a video recorded message, which we'll share with you. Mr. Kushagra Nandan, Co-founder and President, SunSource Energy. Ms. Faustine Gaimard, Public Affairs, Accio Energy. Mr. Federico Fucci, Policy Officer, European. Vinay, session is all over to you. We'll just have a quick video from Dr. Nicole Glaneman, and then probably we can start the discussions. Can we have the video, please?
Thank you, Mr. Rustagi. Shri Sinha Ji, Mr. Kukuk, dear participants, Namaskar and welcome from Germany. My name is Dr. Nicole Glaneman. I'm in charge for the Bilateral Energy Cooperation with India, the so-called Indo-German Energy Forum, in the Department for Bilateral Energy Cooperation in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. We are very grateful to the EU delegation for having organized today's session on rooftop solar and also for inviting me to talk today. There is no doubt that PV rooftop is a huge driver for the energy transition worldwide. On a global scale, annually up to 40% of all solar panels are presently being installed on roofs. Germany is no exception. More than 70% of all solar capacity installed in Germany is mounted on the roof of buildings and on facilities belonging to farmers. There's a clear trend towards self-consumption of the generated electricity, especially in the residential and commercial sector, where tariffs are the highest in Germany. In these segments, people benefit directly from the energy transition. They directly participate in the renewable energy business and invest on their own. In the past, the investment decision for a solar rooftop was driven by high feed-in tariffs, which were required to accelerate the adoption of solar energy. Today, consumers still benefit from secured feed-in of surplus electricity, but try to maximize their self-consumption. Electricity from a solar roof is simply cheaper than electricity from the grid. To increase the level of self-consumption of own electricity generated from a PV rooftop, battery storage systems, especially for the residential systems, have become quite popular. More than 50% of newly installed PV rooftop systems in Germany already come with a battery, a huge market which also helps to stabilize the grid of the entire country. In so-called virtual power plants, thousands of behind-the-meter batteries are already connected with each other through the internet and participate in the trading of electricity at electricity exchanges and other balancing markets. So solar, and especially rooftop solar in combination with storage, is a strong market segment in Germany. This is how many households and companies achieve self-consumption rates of 50 to 60% or even higher. And Germany needs more power from renewables. The German government has decided to end coal-fired power generation by 2038, possibly earlier. All our nuclear power plants will already be shut down by the end of next year. We aim to become completely climate neutral by 2045, the latest. And even so, last year, almost 50% of Germany's entire electricity consumption already came from renewable energy sources, mainly wind and solar. We constantly try to develop new market segments to achieve an even higher solar penetration in Germany. Building integrated solar is a small but promising niche market. The combination of large-scale agriculture, below large arrays of solar panels, the so-called agri-photovoltaics, is another area my government is supporting through so-called special innovation tenders. There will be a specific session here at REI on Friday, organized by the Indo-German Energy Forum and NSEFI, which we are very happy to invite you to. In fact, both our governments, Government of India and Government of Germany, have agreed to look deeper into promising markets for solar rooftop, which is why I'm delighted to be here with you today. For the upcoming discussion, I wish all panelists and participants new insights and a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Namaskar and Pir Melinge.
Very good afternoon. Thank you to Informa and REI Expo for hosting us. Now that we have the context to the rooftop solar market in India, I just want to add a little bit more numbers. So the government set a target of 40,000 megawatts by 2022. Based on our own research, we have estimated conservatively a total potential across all consumer segments of about 120,000 megawatts. The reality is that today we are at about 7,700 megawatts of installed capacity, which is obviously way behind the government targets. To add to that, we were adding about 1,600, 1,700 megawatts every year until about 2017-18, and the market growth rate was like anything between 80 to 100% per annum. And in the last 3 years, we've actually lost a lot of momentum. There have been a number of factors, whether it is GST, financing, net metering going away, etc., because of which the market growth rates have kind of fallen and the market has stagnated, so to say. So I hope, with our panelists, we can get deeper insights into some of these issues. I will start the discussion with Kushagra. I believe Kushagra has to go. So, Kushagra, you have been one of the early movers in the rooftop solar market. You are present not just in India, but in other Asian geographies as well. What would you say have been your key observations and key challenges faced by consumers as well as installers like you holding the market back? And are there any key lessons from the other geographies that we can take and adopt in the Indian market?
Sure, Vinay.
Kushagra, I hope you can hear us.
Yes, sir. I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
Great. First of all, very encouraging numbers from the study, what you have just mentioned. But I think we have to just put it in a reality now. But I think the biggest, coming back to your question, the biggest hurdle what we have seen is the certainty on regulatory front. As long as the regulatory certainty is there, the markets have opened up and the financing has followed. And we have seen it multiple times now. In states where the net metering was there, we see a lot of adoption of solar happening on the rooftops. But states where all of a sudden net metering was gone, for example, we saw a tremendous decline of the adoption of solar. So I think regulatory certainty will always help, and we are truly hoping the new Electricity Act will address a lot of the issues which we are facing collectively. Secondly is the accessibility to finance the projects, especially on the rooftop segment part. It has become very easy to finance large-scale projects, and a lot of institutions have supported. On the rooftop front, there's one live line, which is World Bank SBI line, which has been supporting in certain NBFCs, for example, Tata Cleantech and a few others have been supporting, but more. But if we go beyond that, it is basically a very, very less options which are out there. So accessibility or to finance, and even if we go to a smaller size projects, either residential rooftops, then it becomes even a bigger challenge from that perspective. What we have seen is in other countries in Southeast Asia where we have been active, wherever there has been a clear regulatory push and clarity. For example, look at Vietnam, what they have done, building out a few gigawatts in rooftops alone in a matter of a year or so. It's a credible example what some markets can do. But nevertheless, I think we all have hope, and we are seeing positivity on the regulatory front coming in. But it should be it should not be in a start and stop mode. It should be a continuous process where we see a regulatory, and we should DISCOM should start seeing us as a positive from a positive angle rather than seeing us as that these guys are out there to take our clients. But what we see is these two aspects. But what we also see is with the adoption of storage, which is happening slowly but surely, more options will start coming in, and which should start leading towards more rapid adoption of solar. Over to you, Vinay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kushagra. Could I just ask you, you said regulatory uncertainty is one of the biggest challenges. What would you like to see? Are you referring mainly to net metering policies, or is there anything else that you would like to see?
So definitely net metering is one of them. And recently what we have seen in Rajasthan, asking for the projects which have already been installed, right? And going back and asking to get them converted into a group captive model. And so that we have seen the retrospectively, even, and I think the Supreme Court has also mentioned that retrospectively the tax can also not be done. So I think that elephant in the room, I think, has to be addressed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what we will see is the investors will get a cold feet, right? And there should be not only from a net metering perspective, and apart from that, there should be overall encouragement on the adoption. Although I think there is a whole focus on adopting it, but I think there are short-term challenges which comes in, which we all understand will go away, but it just becomes a short-term issues which restricts the industry to grow.
Sure. Thank you, Kushagra. If you can stay with us, that would be great. But I understand if you have other commitment and you need to go, I think that's fine as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you. So maybe I think the natural thing to do is then to come to Sanjeev. Sanjeev, you heard Kushagra's comments. Obviously, Amplus is one of the leading CNI roof platforms in the market. Now, one of the key attractions for the consumers is that rooftop solar is a very cost-effective way for them to procure renewable power. Cost is anything between 30 to 50% cheaper than grid power. Why is still the market held back? Is net metering the only way out? Many consumers are believed to be adopting behind the meter and other kinds of solutions together with storage. What is the way out, and how can consumers still in the face of these challenges adopt more rooftop solar?
Thanks, Vinay. Happy to be here, part of this panel. I think the question is about what are the reasons why people are even going for rooftop. That's where it all comes down to. So there are different categories of people if you really look at it. There are people in the C&I segment who are looking for two perspectives. One is to reduce their cost, and second, to meet their environmental commitments. So there are people who are saying, okay, whatever is the cost, I have to meet your environmental commitment. For example, if Walmart will come, or Amazon will come, or Google will come, or Microsoft will come and say, okay, we have to meet our environmental commitment, we have to become net zero. So they want to do any types of projects, whatever is the cost. The challenge in these, particularly the solar business or any sort of renewable business, is about to really figure out how to meet the intermittency of the generation. People don't mind paying a price for that. And to meet the intermittency of this power generation, the grid support is critical at this moment, because we don't have enough storage facilities. So what we need to really do is to find out how the grid can support in large scale adoption of rooftop solar electricity generation. So either the grid supports, or we have that type of storage facility. So one of the two things have to be there. Because the battery storage is significantly costlier at this moment, and probably that time will not be far away, as we are hearing the experience of Germany, that probably people will be looking at becoming a self-consumer. So I will generate whatever I need, I will store it, whether I store in the battery, or if I need to store it in my electric vehicle, I will store it there and use it as I need it. But till that happens, there is a certain level of the support required from the utilities, and which to my mind is a single most important factor which the government can facilitate. I won't say that's a challenge, because government has been supporting, but for some reason, and the reasons are well known, the government and the utilities are becoming more and more stingy about offering this facility to the consumers. So if we think that we have to achieve these numbers, whatever are being tagged over, whether it's 40 gigawatt or in your studies 120 gigawatt, we need to create that facilitation mechanism. I won't call it regulation. It's a question of the energy transition. So if we want to transit into a new age energy where there is a space for everyone to generate and consume, then we have to promote the consumers, and therefore the utilities have to change their role from a monopolistic supplier to somebody who is facilitating this transition. And if this transition type of regulations and the commercial arrangements can be made, this is something possibly which can really lead to that. So I won't like to go into that space whether the utilities should let go of their high paying consumers. Of course they should not, because they have to survive on their own. But what can be the alternate mechanism to achieve that?
Thank you, Sanjeev. I have a follow-on question for you. Kushagra mentioned that financing is one of the major challenges in the sector, continues to be so. All the top corporates, they are either financially capable to install it on the systems on their own, or they also have the OPEX model available to them. What about the corporates below that? Do you think, what are you kind of seeing in the market? Are there corporates out there who are not able to install these systems simply because of financing challenges?
See, there will always be challenges as far as the OPEX model or the PPA model is concerned for the SMEs. So in our discussions with World Bank and some other multilateral agencies, so one of the possible mechanisms that we have thought about is to create an insurance type of a product. So actually you provide an insurance for the loan being taken by the SMEs, and so that this financing can be availed by people. Financing remains a challenge because at the end of the day, smaller category segment, neither they have the capital, nor somebody will underwrite them from the bank's point of view or from the developer's point of view. So what they need to do is to go out to the banks, and banks are already lending to them for their core business. Now, on top of core business, if you want to also borrow for solar, that is a challenge. So that's where some of the multilateral agencies, rather than routing all their money into high-end corporates or into the residential segment, should create a separate line in the SME segment, which can use as a more like a credit enhancement and some sort of a guarantee that if these guys default, I will pay.
Right, right. So just to explain, SMEs account for as much as 40% of the total CNI power consumption in the country. But based on our analysis, the uptake of rooftop solar in that segment has been absolutely abysmal. That is a neat segue to come to Chintan. But Chintan, I'm sorry, we'll just have to wait for a few more moments because I want to quickly give an opportunity to Miguel Herrero, who is a policy advisor to Solar Power Europe. As Edwin mentioned, EU has been working on a report to understand the rooftop solar market in India in more detail and really what needs to happen to catalyze the growth in this market. So Miguel will just take a few moments to summarize the report and share the findings with us. Miguel, over to you.
Hello, namaste, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this session and to present the report drafted under the ongoing EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, which analyzes the rooftop market in India to identify the barriers, challenges, and issues which are impeding the growth of the rooftop sector. Covering a lot of the very good points outlined by the previous panelists. Concretely, this report was written by Solar Power Europe in partnership with PwC, and what we did was to delve into the market situation in the EU to understand the key drivers and the innovative business models which could enhance rooftop solar uptake in India. So maybe a brief comment on the market situation in the EU. Currently, we have over 90 gigawatts of installed capacity on roofs as of 2020. This represents about 70% of the total installed capacity in the EU. About 20% are installed on residential rooftops, so smaller than 10 kilowatts, while 30% are installed on commercial rooftops between 10 and 250 kilowatts, and 20% on industrial rooftops between 250 kilowatts and 1 megawatt in capacity. The majority of this capacity is deployed in Germany, followed by France and Italy. And here, the role of Germany as a trailblazer for the rooftop segment cannot be ignored, with the adoption of feed-in tariff schemes already in 1991 and a huge, massive uptake as of 2000s, driven by very high subsidy rates. So the growth of rooftop solar was driven beyond the national initiatives also by a strong political support at EU level, which translated into effective regulatory support mechanisms and a diversity of financing options. In this regard, we cannot ignore the very ambitious regulatory framework that has been being developed since the 2009 Climate and Energy Package, which culminated in 2018 with the Clean Energy Package, which among many other things introduced basic definitions and requirements for individual and self-consumption, for energy communities, and for active consumers or prosumers. This has also translated into stable support schemes, and I will get into this a little bit later. But crucially, it has laid out key principles for clear administrative procedures for on-site solar, including simple, streamlined procedures, specific procedures for small-scale PV, and the need to have clear timeframes and deadlines for these administrative procedures. Now, with the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package presented in July, we are going to see a period of accelerated growth for solar, driven, among other things, by private procurement of renewables through, for example, corporate power purchase agreements. But this was also accompanied by very favorable market conditions, which made it increasingly more interesting for consumers and businesses to deploy on-site installations. On the one side, you had record-breaking cost reductions, which made rooftop solar cheaper than electricity in many places in Europe, leading to particularly growth in countries such as Hungary and Poland or in Spain, but also a very palpable growing environmental consciousness, both of citizens and businesses, who see this as the right thing to do. And really, I mean, in the European Union, there's a huge, still untapped potential to deploy on-site solar. Only 10% of suitable roofs are currently have solar. And rooftop solar could generate at least 25% of the electricity consumption, with 2/3 of this potential being cheaper than local electricity tariffs. Crucially, this potential also represents a huge opportunity to drive sustainable job creation. Investments into solar offer the highest level of jobs created of any power generation technology, according to the International Energy Agency. But in particular, rooftop solar maximizes the job creation during the construction phase, which can be delivered very quickly because of shorter lead times for the development of these projects. Now, here, solar rooftop business models rely on a combination of support schemes, available finance, and are enhanced by digital innovations. And in this regard, something that we would like to stress, and which comes out in the report, is that stable public support schemes have a key role to play to drive the growth of rooftop solar in any market. And so the implementation of feed-in tariffs, as in Germany, was, with other very good examples in France, Portugal, and Greece, is a very good first step. But increasingly, what we have been seeing is a move towards net metering schemes that credit solar energy system owners for the electricity they actually inject into the grid. However, these types of schemes are being phased out as they don't favor consumers' time value sensitivity to energy prices and their demand side flexibility potential. So what we're seeing is also a very important growth of support schemes for self-consumption, which maximize the physical consumption of the electricity grid within the building, and also prosumer business models which value this flexible provision of electricity. And crucially, something which we find very interesting is the development of collective self-consumption models, which enable multiple households or businesses in shared buildings or nearby buildings to jointly self-consume and produce this electricity. But very importantly, as solar is becoming increasingly competitive, we are seeing the growth of other consumer-driven business models, which are developing outside of government support across the EU. So beyond the direct ownership of the solar and storage systems, which, as was said before, rely on upfront capex investments, corporate power purchase agreements and solar leasing models are becoming increasingly common in the EU, and we see these as one of the key drivers for growth in the coming years. This is also something that we're seeing in India, where on-site solar systems deployed by renewable energy service companies, or RESCOs, and distribution companies, DISCOMs, has been growing. Particularly the RESCO model has seen an increasing share since 2016, reaching 31% in 2020, up from only 3% in 2014. And Basically, this model is preferred by CNI consumers, and these are the same reasons as in the EU, because it guarantees savings from high and volatile electricity grid tariffs. There is no or very little need for capital investment needed, and the system installations and maintenance are often managed by third parties. And so in this regard, what we have seen in India, as was said before, is a huge domination of the larger commercial and industrial systems, particularly industrial systems, and a much lower uptake of residential systems. And I will not get into all the details, but really, I mean, what the report identifies is that this is a result of the upfront costs associated with the small size solar projects, which cannot be borne by the consumers. And this is lacked with lack of awareness and access to innovative business models for these consumers, but also difficulty for developers to aggregate small scale projects. And also this comes sometimes not wanting to promote solar rooftops as they perceive it as a threat to their revenue. And in this, it's clear that innovative financing instruments are key to lower the cost of capital for solar PV projects, which is the one of the main impediments for rooftop solar projects. And here, I mean, you have your traditional private equity investments, which can be also supported with grants and loans. But really, we are very much more interested about the growth of more innovative approaches such as leasing models, crowdfunding investments, and financial aggregation. And here, financial aggregation is gaining a lot of interest in the European Union, given the significant extent of the decarbonization challenge. And the idea here is that you can pool many smaller scale assets, such as solar rooftop projects, by securitizing all of these assets under one financial product to improve the access to financing for these customers and attract more capital providers who can provide it at a lower rate. Finally, digitalization is the final leg to make on-site solar flexible, profitable, and inclusive. And here in this diagram, I'm showing the key areas which the report identifies that digital technologies can support rooftop solar PV, such as, for example, enabling the identification of suitable rooftop sites thanks to big data analytics, or the peer-to-peer trading and the creation of local energy grids thanks to blockchain technologies. So basically, the report that we are launching today really very much highlights the huge untapped potential for on-site solar, both in the EU and in India, and how ambitious, stable, and clear policy frameworks are needed to unlock this potential. In this regard, we need public support schemes which will drive initial growth for the sector, but then we need to ensure that clear frameworks are in place that enable the private financing of on-site solar, as this will become the dominant form going forward. To make this happen, innovative financial tools have to be available for the consumers, but also the developers, and these must be combined with incentives for the deployment of smart digital technology in combination with these systems. So that is all on my side. Thanks a lot for listening, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you, Miguel. I think the report hits most of the central issues in the market. I hope there will be some action points coming out of this to enable the market growth. Sorry, before we go to Chintan, I would actually maybe finish the market player section first. So Ankit, we will come to you. Maybe you can also just quickly introduce yourself, particularly Park, to everybody here. But if you can just add on to what Kushagra and Sanjeev said, how do you see the market growth playing out in future, given all the setbacks recently? and what are your expectations from the stakeholders to facilitate market growth?
Hello. Thanks, Vinay, and thanks, Informa, for this opportunity. With respect to what we see in the rooftop segment, we see certain challenges which does affect us. Few of them are more focus on economics rather than on the sustainability. So what we see in the market is that savings are one of the key criteria which are seen by the customer. We do understand that savings is very important, but at the same time, a lot of emphasis should also be put on the quality aspects. What is going on the roof, who is installing it, what sort of system is going on the roof, and how it will be sustained for a long term. Apart from that, there are a couple of more things which we see as challenges. That is the price variations. Over the years, I have seen the module prices have fluctuated in the years due to various reasons, maybe the raw material availability or the glass or the freight cost, but that really affects the viability of any project. And apart from this, the government policies, as Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Kushagra from SunSource has already highlighted, that the regulatory part definitely helps the rooftop market to grow. We see that states have their own policies. Some policies are, carved out by the center. We don't see consistency between them. And also the impact of duty structure as well as, taxes plays a very important role. So from the stake, if you ask me what I would ask, from the stakeholder side is that if we can have something like a uniform policies, across the country for rooftop solar, that would really help. Even with defined timelines, suddenly if some rule comes that let's implement a duty structure, let's increase the GST. So this really affects from an EPC as well as a developer point of view, this really affects the project, its viability. So defined timelines would be important, as well as, the approval process. Each state have their own approval process, which can be streamlined, maybe a single approval window, a single approval process would be more beneficial. Apart from it, also from the developers or the EPC side, my expectations would be that we educate the customer or bring more awareness in the market. Yes, people do know about solar. People do know that putting a solar will, help them in savings. But when I go and meet customers, they hardly have any knowledge about, the technical aspects related to solar. Maybe we would have not, or the people, the solar companies they would be talking would have not imparted that knowledge to them. So I think so we from the industry also need to create more knowledge and awareness in the market for solar. Yeah.
Thank you, Ankit. So we will come to Chintan now. Chintan, I hope you can hear us.
Yeah, I can quite well hear you.
Good afternoon, Chintan.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So Chintan, you heard, unfortunately, nothing seems to have changed over the years when it comes to financing for rooftop solar. And my fear is that the World Bank, State Bank of India line is probably going to run out maybe sometime in the next 6 to 12 months. So I know that IREDA has also been financing rooftop solar, but probably not as much as what most people want. So it will be good to hear from you. What is your financing focus in the rooftop solar market? What kind of challenges have you focused? And why is it not possible for IREDA to take a greater role in financing this market?
Yeah, thanks, Vinay. I think I would like to differentiate the rooftop solar market into three major segments as far as India is concerned. One is a state-driven or a government-driven market, where essentially you have the central utilities and central establishments, or no, state establishments essentially has got a ownership coming from the government, going under a RESCO model. This is something which is most preferred by the financing companies, because the counterpart, there's a PPA in place, there's a counterparty in place, and there are roof rights in place, and the counterparty is good, and it makes a great commercial sense for the counterparty to honor the PPA. You don't have the issues of net metering over there, because the mapping of the rooftop segment which has been done is essentially to meet the base load of the consumer. So this is the mainstay where most of the bankers come into picture. It's a non-issue in terms of risk associated. The second segment, which is the commercial segment or the SME segment, as we talk about our CNI segment, commercial industrial consumers segment. Now, that's where the tricky thing comes into picture, because at times you may get into a net metering type of issue, because your base load may be lower than the peak that you might generate from the solar. And the Indian tariff philosophy, which is there for a couple of years by the distribution companies, is the tariff does not reflect the cost to serve. That means the cost to serve might be lower than the tariff charged. So that's where the arbitrage comes into picture. And that's the reason that CNI segment seems to be the most lucrative, because the tariff fixed by the regulatory committee for CNI segment is actually much more than the cost to serve. Now that's where it pinches the distribution companies that come with a couple of policies to essentially safeguard their revenue. So that's where the trick comes into picture. CNI segment is something which the bankers are a little bit worried about, in terms of depending on the type of consumer you have and type of policies a particular state might be following. But again, in a CNI segment, if the consumption is the generation is within the base load of the consumer, I don't think there's much of an issue. But then the second set of problem that comes in the CNI segment is the credibility of the off-taker, because the CNI segment, their main business is definitely not energy saving, but something else. And how robust is their business? Would they walk out of the PPA because you don't have any mortgage, because it's just a roof? And would a substitution right on the PPA would be allowed to take charge over the roof? These are questions that bankers normally put up, and that's where a lot of hiccups come into picture. On the third segment, which is domestic segment, I think that's a no-brainer. Domestic segment, you'll always have an advantage with the distribution companies, because the tariff that a domestic consumer pays in India is actually much lower than the cost to serve. So you'll find there will be no resistance on the domestic rooftop anywhere in India. But there's a very fragmented market for a bankers to get into, at least for a central banker like us to get into. So you have to get with the local banks or the local NBFCs or MFIs to essentially bridge that credit gap. What large bankers or centralized financing agencies can do is do an intermediary financing. That means there may be local banks or local non-banking finance companies or MFIs. They create a portfolio, and we can essentially buy out the entire portfolio, or essentially give a line of credit to them, so that the credit goes all the way to the end consumer. These are a couple of things that I wanted to share. The sector has got its own set of challenges. It's evolving. The potential is huge. Everybody knows that. So there's no debate on that. The only question is that how do you deliver the right model? And this is something which we need to concentrate on. The advantage with India is if the model gets right, it's scalable, it's replicable, and it's you can actually expand quite well. That's all, Vinay, I had to share from my side.
Sure. Thank you, Chintan. I know we're running out of time, but I would like to ask you a quick follow-on question. Are you aware of any specific thrust from MNRE on IREDA, PFC, or any other banks, etc., to come out with more rooftop solar specific financing schemes, notwithstanding all the challenges?
Vinay, we've been financing rooftop from last 5-7 years. We've been funded something like close to 60 megawatt of rooftop, which is a sizable amount in the segment. I can tell you my own perspective, barring the domestic rooftop market, I think cost of fund is not much of a challenge for the off-taker. It is more of the transaction cost involved, because these projects are relatively small in size. 200 kilowatt is a good project in rooftop, but a very small project for bankers like us or bankers like others, that step of due diligence you have to do. And more importantly, there's a psychological issue in terms of a bottleneck that that the bankers feel that you can't have a mortgage on a roof. That's something that means you don't have a proper security coverage for a banker to get into picture. So these are something that are getting evolved. There are certain legal case laws which are getting evolved in creation of hypothecation. These are, I think, more of a security issue than of a financing issue. And as I said, we need to just get into 1, 2, or 3 nice models. Like the utility-driven model seems to be very, very perfectly fine, because railways have been doing it for a couple of years, and almost every banker is fully on board on railway model. And we've been financing railway projects whenever they come in. It's much easier for us, because railways also understand what substitution means. They're quite banker friendly, I would say. So these are things that we need to evolve. And as I said, CNI segment in pockets, it makes a great sense, and it is happening in India. But as I said, you still require a fair amount of intermediaries to reduce the transaction cost for bankers like us to come into the picture.
All right. Thank you, Chintan. I will come over to Abhishek, over to you. Discoms have always been the fall guys when it comes to rooftop solar. But, we will not touch upon the part about cross-subsidy and net metering policy, etc. But more crucially, rooftop solar is supposed to be good for the grid because it is a distributed source of power. In your experience, what have been the positives of having more rooftop solar capacity in the grid? Also, what have been the challenges in terms of incorporating and absorbing that capacity in the grid? If you can maybe share your perspective from the Delhi perspective, from the Delhi basis, and also from a wider other discoms, state-level discoms.
Yeah, thank you, Vinay. Is it audible, right?
Yes, you are.
Fine. First of all, DER, distributed energy resources, are the mainstay for any transition to a DSO role. So the discoms are now transitioning to a DSO role, if you talk from a discoms perspective. Rooftop solar becomes a very important distributed energy resources. And to enable it, the current business models, which is purely RESCO and CAPEX, might not be able to drive it. So first of all, in year 2017, that was 4 years back, with the help of GIZ, Germany, we had a study as to what and how much amount of rooftop solar can be absorbed by the present grid without any thermal upgrades. There were some numbers, and after 4 years now, we feel that they were very good numbers. Some 75% of the rated capacity of the DT. Equivalent, you can push solar, and still there are thousands of DTs where this number has not been achieved. So rooftop solar absorption, not a problem at all. Then we went ahead and simulated and experienced like what is the impact on the power quality and voltage as well as stability of the network in terms of rooftop solar. Barring very few sites where we experienced over voltage situation, when there was a reverse power flow because of the dedicated DT over there, and during dusk and dawn when the power quality dips slightly, otherwise there is no problem in terms of tripping of supply due to rooftop solar. That was the technical aspect. Now with the decline in the pricing of the storage part, and as a part of that study we had seen that if you are pumping in more and more batteries, we have a model, we have a product called PV Port and Store by GIZ, so which we are promoting in city of Delhi, and Gujarat also they are promoting. Using this model, which is a very portable solar PV rooftop along with a battery option, there is an infinite potential of solar rooftop which can be pushed. And these are all behind the meter solutions, behind the meter systems. So there is no problem of over voltage because you're not exporting the power at all. Because if you're not exporting to the grid, there is no problem of the voltage, etc. Now coming to the commercials, I mean, why are discoms shying away from embracing rooftop solar in a big way? Very obvious questions. Because of the tariff arbitrage or the cross subsidy, the C&I segment going away with the rooftop solar, that is the main challenge. But then we did a study that was also way back in 2019, saying that if we focus on distributed rooftop solar and that too in the congested area and that too in the cross subsidized consumers, that is residential segment, it is going to help us in our business in the current business form, even today, when we have a lot of cross subsidy. Going forward, when this cross subsidy goes and ACOS and ABR becomes equivalent, ACS and ARR gap becomes zero, and ABR of different consumer segments also becomes more or less equal, not like skewed towards C&I, higher ABR, then possibly adopting rooftop solar by C&I segment or rooftop by residential segment is immaterial for discoms. One simple point that I emphasize is, even if all the consumers go away for rooftop solar, grid is going to stay. It's not like going away, grid is going to stay. Only thing is the fixed cost burden of the distribution utilities. If it is met, then there is no problem at all. Today, that is the challenge. The challenge is 80% of the cost is power purchase cost and 50% of that 80% is fixed cost, PPA, fixed cost PPA. Whereas the retail tariff, 90% is variable, 10% is fixed recovery. Okay? So this skewedness now the government of India is working on. They have come out with a policy that 25 years and above, older plants you can exit. That is a way to rationalize your power portfolio, bring down your fixed cost burden, and thereby having some kind of headroom to promote more and more distributed energy resources. Last but not the least, the Government of India and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is working on technical specifications on the inverter, where standardization of communication module, like for example, OpenADR is being now floated by Bureau of Indian Standards as a standardized communication protocol amongst the inverters. That is important because in the times to come, very soon, we would like to have demand response from these inverters. And situational awareness of the grid, low voltage grid will be very important and the DERs would have to be dispatched. That is the transformation which is happening. And in that direction, we have proposed an alternate business model to the Honorable Commission here in Delhi, where we have said that these small fragmented rooftop solar for which even IREDA is not ready to shell out loans, as we heard, why can't we aggregate them and convert that into a hybrid model where the RESCO player is there, these 5 kilowatt or 3 kilowatt rooftop solars, each piece, each unit, maybe hundreds of them, 500s of them, 600s of them, taken together under a RESCO mode. They sign a PPA with the DISCOM. They have a payment security. These people don't have to pay for the capex and they are getting the benefit under the net metering or going forward net billing. So this model, if it is coming up, so that this segment will be taken care of because we have seen, despite so many efforts by World Bank, no retail product has been there for the solar consumers, especially in the residential sector. So that's all from my side.
Thank you, Abhishek. But you do know that there is a scheme in Kerala in which it is the DISCOM which is aggregating demand from consumers and doing an aggregated RESCO model.
Yeah, Kerala, there are two models actually, not one. There are two models. One is CAPEX. So it's a kind of CAPEX where the government of Kerala is helping out in CAPEX, right? So like in Delhi, they give GBI, Generation Based Incentive. So CAPEX subsidy is being given by MNRE and the GBI is being given by the government of Delhi. That is patronizing the performance. Now in Kerala, the RESCO model you are saying is slightly different because they have fixed the rental of the roof to a particular number.
Yeah.
In Delhi, what we have proposed, it's not fixed to a particular number because that number could be disputable. The rental or the so-called returns to the roof owner who is leasing out the roof would be in terms of the net metering benefits. The net metering benefits is a function of the generation in the rooftop solar because that is also very important. You see, the yield of rooftop solar in our country, especially in the urban cities, 2.5 or maximum 3 units per kilowatt per day, and which is a loss of the taxpayers' money. You are getting 40% subsidy, and the yield is not there. So therefore, there is a need to link this performance or the returns to the rooftop owner or the lease lessor to the generation. That's what the change in the Kerala model and this model.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you.
I would like to now come to Federico and Faustine. I hope you can hear us. So I think I've got similar questions for both of you. Rooftop solar is the dominant source of renewable power in Europe. In India, it is completely the reverse. What are the key takeaways? You also heard the excellent presentation by Miguel on the market status, the challenges, the growth opportunity, etc., and obviously the comments from the other panelists. What are the key takeaways from Europe in terms of policy, business models, or operational best practices that you think could be incorporated in the Indian market? So let me first start with Federico, and then I'll come to you, Faustine.
Yes, hi, thank you. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
That's okay. So just a quick word about who we are at Europe On, and we represent electrical contractors. So basically companies undertaking electrical work and doing the installation of solar panels on roofs and elsewhere. And our main concern and say our main view on the solar market is really about the human capital. And you know, we talk a lot about this many gigawatts that need to be installed and you know, percentages of the energy mix that has to be decarbonized. But we ask the question, who will do this work? And because this is our members, our member companies are doing this. And maybe the main thing that you know we would like to highlight in this regard is that, and this is what we urge also decision makers to pay attention to, is really ensuring that there is enough workers that that they have the right skills, you know, to accompany this scale up in solar energy. So for us, this is really where the main issue is, and this is really what we try to focus on, and ensuring that there's no bottleneck at installation stage when, you know, the regulatory certainty is there, the financing is there for the solar panels, but then you might find that you know you can't find an available installer, or you have to wait too long to find an installer who will come to your house or to your business and install a solar panel. So in this regard, we've really been pushing member states as well as the EU and the Commission to pay attention to this, and really to you know, intertwine skills and climate considerations when scaling up solar. And so maybe as you mentioned earlier on, there's quite some strong targets in India for rooftop solar. So we would really urge you to maybe consider this aspect of human capital and see that you have enough workers and that they have the right skills to really install this, and also install this in a safe way. You know, we have this view of a electrified house, and you've mentioned storage, but also, you know, in Europe, we are talking a lot about electric vehicles as a way to increase renewable shares in transport, but also increase self-consumption of solar energy. And so this means that you will have to really upskill the workforce that is available, and so this is also something maybe that starts early on with the right education, with making sure that technical education is valued also for people, you know, to really feel confident about this career path, and then also ensuring that there is a lot of upskilling and reskilling opportunities and a lot of lifelong learning, because the pace of innovation being what it is today, this is going to be increasingly necessary. So, and this is something maybe that you know might go overlooked in some discussions, in some debates, but this is still something that is really important. And you know, it's not all issues. You know, there's a lot of potential here, and we have undertaken a study recently that you'll be able to find on our website, where we have evaluated the job potential with regard to rooftop solar installations, and just with a 2030 time horizon, looking at EU targets, we've seen that, if I remember correctly, we have something about 225,000 jobs that could be created only in our sector at the installation stage, just for rooftop solar in the EU. And so we really, stress the fact that there's a big recovery potential here. And as Miguel has mentioned also before, rooftop solar can effectively kickstart a recovery because there's not too much planning ahead. It can you can go forward with the installation quite quickly. I mean, if you're talking about a domestic system, 1 or 2 days and it's installed. So really, investing in the skills and the workforce alongside clean energy is really key for the climate, is really key for our economic recovery, and also brings a lot of consumer benefits. And installers are in touch with consumers. They're able to advise them on what is best for their home, how to increase their self-consumption. And so, there's a bit of a win-win-win in a way. So this is really our key message, I would say, really on the skills and the workforce, which starts early on with the attractiveness and the quality of technical careers and education. Later on with the and upskilling, which will be increasingly important. And then also maybe the last thing that is also important is the stability of support schemes that give the confidence to electrical contractors, which are more often than not SMEs, to invest in their own workforce, in building up new business models such as leasing, for instance, which has also been mentioned before, which does require some upfront capital. So this is really very important, and unstable support schemes will be very detrimental also to these SMEs and to this segment of the economy. So I would say this is our key message: skills and workforce that need to be considered just as well as the panels themselves, let's say. And especially if you're looking at upscaling your solar rooftop installation, this will be really key. So yeah, this is maybe my main consideration. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Federico. Faustine, last but not least, we come to you. Sorry for keeping you waiting. What is your advice to the Indian policymakers and to the Indian market?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here and for all those very interesting presentations. I clearly learned a lot today, so I didn't mind waiting. Just to quickly go back on who we are, Accio is a French renewable IPP. So we've been developing renewable projects across the world for the past 15 years. And as regards rooftops, we've been kind of struggling actually for the past 15 years, but we've come up with solutions. So I guess that could be interesting takeaways. The first one is that we faced that we had products that weren't what people wanted, because we have problems for integration of solar on roofs when it comes to city, when it comes to specific regulations, etc. So one of the solutions, and there are more and more on the market, I think it's building integrated PV. You can see one behind me. This is, we feel, a solution, and we've decided to invest a lot in that. That answers a lot of concerns from, for example, City Hall, because it integrates aesthetically in the city. You can have also a full roof that is covered, so you gain a lot in predictable and in kilowatt hours mainly. And you also, but that's true for all roofs, get an economic benefit from something that's usually immobilized. So that's the first thing. It allows it to develop it really widely. We decided, for example, to have it in several colors that allow to address more and more spaces. And also it can be adapted to any scale. So I can show you here an individual house, but it's also relevant for a really large scale application. And it really goes with what Federico was saying on training, because for that you have to have people that know how to manage electricity and work on roofs. So really, this is the one of the struggle we're facing right now, is to have the right people and rightly trained to have both expertise. As for regulatory measures, I would say that in France, the framework didn't exist, so we had to create it to have like the right insurance, the right certifications, the right everything. I mean, to have these products qualified as construction material, and that it could be insured, and that people would have benefit from it, and not being in like a regulatory blur, which was the case before. So more as we go on, there is a more clear regulatory scheme about that. And most importantly, I would say that the support mechanism is key, because we have a cost structure that's rather different than from regular solar installations. That is obviously a lot more expensive, but it also provides a lot more benefits. So one of the key is to have dedicated support schemes. And what we have done in France is that the French government put in place a bonus for BIPV on building installations, which was really recently approved by the European Commission. It was like 2 weeks ago, so it's not effective yet. But we feel that this is clearly the key support mechanism that will allow the solar rooftop in France, as at least to upscale in the next years. I would say 3 to 4 years, to have like a real push and real incentive for private investors just like us to invest. And finally, there is still this question of financing besides the support mechanisms. So we feel that everyone is really interested to go to solar, but they don't know how to finance that. So what we have made, again at our little scale, but I think that's something that can be replicated, is that we've created with a French partner, which is called Banque des Territoires, third-party investment tools, so that our clients, which could be particular, which can be public bodies, a lot of them actually, because we can install that on schools, etc. Don't have to bear the initial capital investment, which can be really complicated for them. But there is this third-party investment which will be reimbursed through electricity sale during the lifetime of the project. So basically, you have full rooftop solar for free, and that's something that's kind of easy to put in place. But with the right mechanism, you can really ease the development of those solar rooftops. So that was basically our key takeaways for our point of view, and hope it can be useful.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting. Thank you so much for your time. There are so many interesting issues and market facets to discuss, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So thank you very much for your patience. I hope you found the discussion interesting. I also want to thank my panelists, Kushagra Nandan, Chintan Shah, Sanjeev Agarwal, Abhishek Ranjan, Ankit Rastogi, Federico Fucci, and Faustine Gaymard.
Vinay, we have the closing remarks from Mr. Matthew Cray, who's the International Relations Officer, European Commission.
Sure.
So we would request Mr. Matthew Cray to come online for his closing remarks. Matthew, can you hear us? Matthew, if you could unmute your mic.
Matthew, if you can hear us, just wave your hand, please. No, he can't hear us.
Matthew, can you hear us? Edwin, could you just check with Matthew? Ladies and gentlemen, just give us a minute while we bring Matthew online. Just give me a moment, please. Matthew, if you can hear us now. Hello, Matthew, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, Matthew.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got disconnected for while first team was talking. So I guess we are ready for, let's say, the closing remarks and a very brief wrap up of the session.
Yes, Matthew.
Okay. So I want to thank Vinay for the excellent moderation of the panel, and of course all panelists for the presentations and their contributions. I think we had a very interesting session, and we were certainly also happy to see that the report by Solar Power Europe and PwC India has been launched through this session. It's a concrete product of our EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership in the solar sector. And so I think that we hope that what comes out of it as recommendations can be further taken up in continued activities under our partnership. I just want to link some of the things that have been said in this session to also other activities that we have under the Clean Energy and Climate Partnership. Because we have some activities when it comes to smart grids, when it comes to financing, when it comes to electricity sector or power sector regulation and market functioning, which are all relevant for the barriers or the challenges that have been commented upon by the different panelists. Yeah? So I just recall that some have pointed to certain technical issues with the grid, and certainly also the need to let's say, for linking deployment of rooftop solar with new digital innovative solutions. That this is like a necessity when we want to deploy rooftop solar on a massive scale. Most of the speakers mentioned the importance of regulatory certainty, of stability in support schemes. I would add to this that when we move away, like in many countries in Europe is being done from net metering, then as part, certainly for the residential segment of the rooftop solar market, the role of intermediaries, whether it's on financing part, but certainly also on the supply and the sale of the electricity generated through rooftop solar becomes all the more important. Yeah, and so the regulatory certainty and the stability of the support schemes do not only relate to specifically what is offered to the residential consumer, but also to what is enabled in terms of the role for intermediaries. Yeah? So the possibility for intermediaries like aggregators and so on to also participate in the power market is an important issue there. So several of these aspects are covered in many of the activities of the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership. We have already co-financed a number of joint EU-India demonstration projects in the field of smart grids, where precisely the integration of rooftop solar is demonstrated, also with the deployment of some local storage. There is also elements of how the solar electricity produced is rewarded, that is being tested in those projects. We have also in place an EU-India high-level platform on smart grids, which looks then at the further step, meaning, okay, how do you go from demonstrations to large-scale replication? Financing, we are in the process of setting up an activity which we called the FICEP platform, financing investments in clean energy projects. And distributed renewables is one of the segments in the market that we specifically looking at, because indeed there are some real challenges there when it comes to financing. And then finally, we have also a work stream under the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership on power sector regulation, power sector reform, looking also at aspects of the evolution of support schemes for renewables, but then for rooftop solar in particular, and on the regulation of the power market. As I said, can it enable a role for intermediaries, which then in turn will be also an incentive for further deployment of rooftop solar. So all these aspects are also covered in many of the activities of the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership. And in that sense, we were very happy today to hear all those insights which can really be taken forward in our continued activities. So with this, I turn back the floor to you, just mentioning that tomorrow we have this session on offshore wind, and I hope that many of the people present today will also participate in that session of tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you again to EU and to Informa for hosting us. I hope you found the session useful, and I'm happy to conclude it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you so much for the panel. Thank you so much, Vinay. Thank you to
Bye.
all our guests who joined virtually and physically. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thank you.